Okay, so yesterday, we're on page 82. We're on page 82. And this began, on page 82, we started talking about Sodom. Now, if you take a look at 6 lines from the top. So the Torah says, Hashem says, Erdana ve'era, I will go down and see. Erdana ve'era, I will go down and see. Hakitza'akosa haba elai asu kola. If like the scream, the yell that has come to me, then there's going to be trouble. Ve'im lo, if not, Eida, I'll figure out what to do with them. Now, if you look at Rashi, Rashi tells you very briefly that the word hakitza'akosa, if you take a look, hakitza'akosa, where is it? It's the right column, 5 lines from the bottom. Hakitza'akosa shel Medina, and then Rashi brings down at the end, top line on the left column. Top line on Virabosenu Dorsha. Everybody see that top line left column on page 82. Hakitza'akosa is in the feminine form. It doesn't say hakitza'akoso, it says hakitza'akoso. Tzakas riva achas. It is the scream of one young girl. Shehergua b'misa mishuna. They tortured her to death. Al shenosna mozolani, because she gave food to a poor man. Kemefarish b'chelik, as the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. What the Gemara says is they had a law: you're not allowed to feed poor people. And one of the things that remember yesterday we were talking about all the weird things. They had one law: you're not allowed to feed poor people. Because again, they did not want freeloaders coming in and running down their economy. So one of the things they did is they would each give a poor man a coin, and they would write their names on it. But nobody would sell him any bread. So he would die of starvation, and then everybody would come and take their coin back. Which is, again, a form of justification of what you're doing. In other words, I didn't do anything wrong. I gave him tzedakah. What's it my fault? Everybody goes, I didn't do anything. We didn't do anything wrong here. There's a rationalization over here. There's a rationalization. So that's the plain meaning. Now, they had a rule that you're not allowed to feed poor people. So the Gemara says there was a girl, according to one opinion, it was one of Lot's daughters. There was a girl who used to go down to the well, and there was a poor man there, and she would bring food in her bucket. And this poor man, she would very discreetly allow him to take food from her bucket, and that way he stayed alive. So the people of Sodom were wondering, how's this guy staying alive? I mean, the guy doesn't have any support. Where he's staying? And then they discovered that it was her. So what they did was they took her and they put her on the roof. They took off all of her clothing. They put her on the roof. They smeared honey all over her, and the bees stung her to death. That's what. Yeah, that's bad. It should be avoided, Steve. Yes, definitely should be avoided. Now, nothing is at simple level. So if you want what's the simple level? The simple level is that a girl on a roof who's screaming her lungs out because she's getting stung to death, and anybody in town says, gee, what's happening over there? Well, she fed a poor man. That's a great motivation. Right? That's a great motivation to prevent people from feeding poor people. Word gets around. You know why she was going through that? Because she was feeding poor people. That will help reinforce the attitude of let's nobody get carried. Let's not start feeding poor people. That's the plain meaning. I have a deeper, a somewhat more involved idea here. And what I really think is going on here is why this? I mean, there are a lot of forms of torture you could use. Why? What's really going on here? My father, Olav Shalom, is, if he would ask me to do something, or if he'd hear me say, my mother would ask me to do something, and I'd say something like, I haven't got any energy on it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I haven't got, I'm not up to it right now. My father was a master at then creating a situation where he would teach me a good lesson. So for instance, like sometime later on in the day, he'd say something like, okay, who wants to go to the ball game or something? And everybody's, yeah. No, you don't have energy. You don't have energy. That sort of thing. You don't have energy. Right? We had a rule in our house. If you didn't go to school, if you didn't feel well enough to go to school, you could stay home. But then you could get out at night. you don't feel well. Right? And this is what we call in Gemara, lishitascha. Lishitascha means, I don't necessarily agree with you, but according to your reasoning, so on and so forth. Right? I once had a guy in college, who was a Catholic. So I said to him, I always heard that the wafers and the wine in church, the wafers and the wine is supposed to be his part of his flesh and his flesh and his blood. You know that? That's what the Catholics believe. There's a fancy word they use, like transmiguration or something, that his flesh and his what do you call it, goes into the wafers and the wine, and that's what they have in church. That's what they believe. So I was very curious about that. What's that? It's called. It's a fancy word. It sounds like a word out of Harry Potter. It's like transmiguration or something. I don't know what it is exactly. So I was always curious about that. It's just interesting how his flesh got into a bag of Hadar wafers. I'm not sure, but one way or another, Manischewitz wine. Wow, got some splinter from that cross in there. I wish they would strain it better. I'm not sure exactly how this works, but at a certain point, this guy was a Catholic. This nice guy was in college. So I said, Jerry, that idea of the wafers and wine becoming his flesh and blood. Now, I don't believe it, but I'm asking Lishitascha. According to you, I said to him, Jerry, the wafers and the wine, being part of his flesh and blood, what do you think of that? So he wasn't too bright, this guy. He goes, well, I always had trouble with that one. That's what he goes. He wasn't a very religious Catholic, right? And he said, I always had trouble with that one. He also had trouble going to church because he didn't go to church either. He wasn't a fanatic. But at the end of the day, there's this concept. Well, I don't agree, but this is right now. What I think is really going on over here is they're saying to this girl, listen, we are conservatives, we're Republicans. To quote Ronald Reagan when they were talking about welfare rights, Ronald Reagan's attitude was, let them pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Right? What are you handing out money to people? That was a very conservative Republican. You're a liberal do-gooder. Right? Now, we are of the opinion that we don't help. There are no handouts in Sodom. You're worried about everybody. So listen. Lishita, according to you, why are you only worried about human beings? You want to worry about feeding human beings. If to be consistent in your policy, you should feed all wildlife. And not only that, why do you only do it with your hands? To be consistent with your approach, you ought to get your whole body into it. You know what? We're going to help you do what you want to do. Here, we're going to smear honey on you, and now you can go and feed the bees up on the roof. Because that's what you enjoy doing. What's our argument? Our argument is, but they're going to kill me. Well, the counter argument is, a bee sting's not going to kill you unless you're allergic. No bee, but it's not going to be one bee sting. It's going to be one bee, and then he's going to bring in other bees, and all the bees are going to come. They said, that's exactly what we're saying, girl. That's exactly what we're saying. You're going to start feeding one poor man, he's going to bring in another poor man, and another poor man, they're going to run over our economy. In other words, the crime, the punishment, and again, there's a rationale, the punishment fits the crime. You've committed a crime. We're giving you the punishment. Not only that, we got a beautiful argument to show you what the results are of your good, of all your goodness. So there's only one problem. It's a good argument, right? They have a good argument, right? What's the problem? There's only one problem.
That doesn't have to do with good.
They're wrong. Right. The problem is they're wrong. That's the problem. You can argue. In other words, the truth of the matter is like this. Tzedakah, in general, doesn't make any sense. Tzedakah doesn't make any sense. Why should I work and give you money that I've worked for? Get a job, man. Like the rest of us. Get a job. Why should I give you money? It doesn't make any, why should I give it away? Why should I give it away? It doesn't make any sense. You're right, it doesn't make any sense. But it makes perfect sense. Because tzedakah is something we understand that a person is supposed to do. You have charity. Charity you're supposed to give. You have to give charity. Why? Because. That's basic human instinct. You have to give charity. And therefore, their argument is very logical, but not all logic is right, gentlemen, and you'll find that when you get married. Right? You could be perfectly logical. 100% logical. Right? Check it at the door. Because you're wrong. Right? At the end of the day, you're wrong. So it's like a kid, a 3-year-old falls and he hits his knee on the ground. Right? So the mother comes over and she says, "Oh, let me kiss your boo-boo." The father, "Oh, come on, man up. You know that doesn't help." Hey, what does it help? It doesn't. Either it hurts or it doesn't hurt. What does kissing it do? It doesn't hurt. Stop crying, man. I'm right, right? Logically, I'm right. You also believe. You also belong behind bars if you do that. Right? But logically, I'm right. But you're wrong. You're wrong. You got to be a little. There's a little. What do you call it over here? We're not logical. Human beings, as Rav Schiller Senior says, human beings are not logical. We're psychological. It's a very good line. We're not logical. We're psychological, and we're made up. We're not only made up of the straight logic that we try to pride ourselves on till we get caught in traffic, right? Anybody in traffic, all logic goes out the window when you're stuck in traffic for 45 minutes and your air conditioning isn't working. Right? Then you're no longer logical. Then you're very psychological and probably psychopathic, right? So the what do you call it? Now, so Hashem decides that he's going to take out Sodom. And he lets Avram Avinu know. Take a look at Parsha Chav Gimel. And we find the first situation of a Jew bargaining. Right? You have a Jew bargaining. Right? Which is maybe why we do it. It's in our genetics, right? From over here. The first bargaining Jew. Vayigash Avram Vayomar. Avram says to God, Ha'aftis bet tzadik im rasha, will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? Ula yesh chamishim tzadikim b'soch ha'ir. Maybe there are 50 righteous men. Ha'aftis be velosisa lamokel man chamishim ha'tzadikim asher b'kirba. Will you destroy everybody because if there are 50 tzadikim? And Hashem says to Avram, you're right. If I find 50 tzadikim, 2 lines later, Vayomer Hashem imensa b'stam chamishim tzadikim b'soch ha'ir, v'nasasi l'chol ha'mokom ba'avuram. If I find 50 tzadikim, then what do you call? Then I'll spare them. Avram says, what about 45? Spare them for 45. What about 40? 40, 30, 20, 10. Bargain them down. Right? the first Jew in history that bargained. Right? Hence the expression to Jew him down. Right? Avram Avinu is the first one. Right? There we go. He bargains. What's going on? First of all, Avram Avinu is davening. He's not bargaining. He's not bargaining. He's davening. He's pleading with Hashem. The Torah writes it that he said to Hashem, like a conversation. He's pleading on his face. He's fallen over on his face and he's pleading with Hashem to spare the people of Sodom. And Hashem says that, if I find 10, and then what happens in the end? They didn't find him. Now I want to ask a question, gentlemen. What would the Sodom newspapers have said if Hashem had found 10 and he would have spared them? What would the Sodom newspapers have said the next morning? What would the headlines have been? Huh?
Why do we don't know about these people?
Oh, about the 10 people.
Where were they hiding,
Right? Where are these 10 tzaddikim, right? Well, Sodom saved because of 10 people. That would have been the screaming headlines, right? No. Why not?
10 traders.
10 traitors. Wouldn't have said that either. Why not?
Because there aren't any.
What?
They don't have 10.
No. But let's say they would have, and they would have been spared. What would the headlines have said? 10 traitors? No. 10 tzaddikim? No. Where are they? No. You know why? Because they didn't know about it. They had no idea what was supposed to happen. This is only between Hashem and Avraham Avinu. They didn't know that they were 1 inch from an absolute catastrophe. They didn't know that. And eventually they didn't find 10 and there was a catastrophe. There were no headlines at all. Right? There was no newspaper anymore. Right? There's nothing. Stone was gone. Salt. Right? Sulfur. What's the lesson? The lesson is we don't know what's supposed to happen. And there could have one kollel where 10 guys are learning in a kollel, and goodness knows what we're being spared is the merit of their Torah. Not only that, goodness knows what everybody's being spared the merit of your Torah. Right? We don't know what's supposed to happen. Their headlines never talk about what didn't happen. What Hashem didn't do that he was going to want to do. That you need a prophet for. We never have those headlines. We have no idea what was supposed to be. And then you find out, you read the news, that the Israeli the police stopped 25 terrorist attacks in the last week. I didn't even know about that. You only heard about the ones that they didn't stop, the ones they got through. What was the merit? How did they stop them? What else was supposed to happen? Who else did they take a submachine gun away from just at the border? Where else? Who else? We don't know. But we only know what the power and the potency is. 10 tzaddikim could have saved Sodom. So imagine people who are not Sodom, what people are doing when they're learning Torah, they're doing mitzvahs. Right? We have no idea, we have no way of knowing. But the Torah is communicating that. The Torah is saying, look what the potential is for those who do right. Those who do right are sparing the world from all sorts of aggravation. There's a very famous story here, by the way. I heard a story from Rabbi Tatz, an amazing story. That in Germany, in what do you call it? One of the ghettos, there was a young couple, and the wife was pregnant, and she had to get to a woman's doctor. So she left the ghetto, and she was able to. She gets to this woman doctor, and this non-Jewish German woman doctor, and she said to her, "Listen, I happen to know that in a very short time they're going to be destroying everybody in the ghetto. I'm going to hide you here. You stay with me, and I'm going to hide you." So the woman said, "Well, I actually have a husband." She said, "Bring your husband." She said, "Well, I'd love to, but I also have parents." She said, "Bring your parents." So, "But I have siblings." So, "Bring your siblings." My husband has parents. Bring his parents. So it turned out she stopped. She protected, I don't remember what he said, 18 or 22 people over the course of a year and a half. She hid all this entire Jewish family. Okay. After the war, they survived the war. The entire family survived the war. This couple, this young lady who was pregnant, she and her husband moved to America. And they had a family. 50 years later, their children and grandchildren, great-children, they're making a 50-year anniversary celebration for this couple. So somebody said, well, let's see, maybe that doctor is still alive, that woman doctor in Germany. So they flew to Germany. And they found her. She was in her 90s or something. They paid a ticket. They brought her to America to the celebration. And they were showing her, this is all, there were at this point, there were about 200 descendants. And they were showing her, this is your family, or this is what you saved. There's these 200 people. This is all because of you. And then somebody said to her, "Why did you do it?" So she said, "I remember that story in the Bible about Abraham and Sodom, and I was hoping that maybe I could find 9 more in Germany to spare Germany." Well, apparently they weren't there. That's what she said. Right? It was this story this is what inspired her to try to save them. So what you think you do. Sometimes the lesson in life is you do one little thing, and you have no idea what the ripple effects are. You have no idea how far this is going. Right? I told you about the Sephardi guy here with the benching in Ohr Somayach. I never told you about this guy. No. There was a guy used to come in. There used to be like an Israeli program here, and I would go into the lunchroom. I'd stay here for lunch every day, and there was a guy who would come. I told you that story, right? This guy would come in late, and he would eat, and then this guy would bench. It was a Sephardi benching. He would actually sing the benching. I was on my way out, and I would sit there and watch the guy. Baruch atah Hashem, with the whole what do you call it? All the ceremony that went with it, and he would sing it to himself, and he would just bench like that every day. And the few times I saw him, I was thinking to myself, I don't know, it's a little bit of what it's a little bit Balchuva-y. A little bit too much performance over there. But it happened day after day. The guy was saying the whole thing, and I decided, maybe I ought to put a little bit more into my benching. Instead of criticizing this guy, maybe I ought to. So I went home, and I tried a little bit more effort in my benching, and actually my benching upgraded, which isn't saying, it's not saying much considering where it was holding at that point, but it definitely, there was only room for improvement. So I started, focusing a little more on my benching, and I was doing this for a while. I decided, one day I want to thank this guy. I really want to thank this guy. I'd never gone over to him. So the next day I decided I'm going to thank the guy. He came into the lunchroom. He didn't show up the next day, and I never saw him again.
What?
How do you like that? Yeah. Who knows who he was? Right? It was either Eliyahu Navi or a complete optical illusion, right? All I'm telling you is, I had Gilui Eliyahu. See that? Now they're going to be sorry. Does anybody want a bracha? Anybody want a bracha? I charge, by the way, only cash only, right? 1.9 billion, as a matter of fact. So at the end of the day, you don't know what you're doing, how somebody else is affected. So here's a woman, because a woman has a merit of 200 people. The woman has a merit of 200 people. So there's another question everybody asks. Avram Avinu and Sodom were polar opposites. They're polar opposites. Avram Avinu is the ultimate in kindness. He's the ultimate in cruelty. And what does he do? He's pleading to have them spared. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Ohr from Satmar. Rabbi Ohr from Satmar, the Satmars have a certain stance on Zionism. If you're not familiar, let's just put it this way: they do not fly the Israeli flag on Yom HaAtzmaut, to say the least. Right. So the Satmar Hasidim are probably the most vocally. The Rabbi Ohr from Satmar, who was one of the Gedolei Hador in America, him and Rav Aaron Kotler, and he built the Satmar community in America. He was very vocal in his anti-Zionist stance. And somebody once said to him, "I don't understand you. Look at Avram Avinu and look at you. Avram Avinu, there's people, a bunch of rats in Sodom. And what does Avram Avinu do? He goes and he pleads to God on their behalf. And all you do all day long is criticize the Zionists." So Rabbi Yoel said to this guy, the Torah tells you what Avram Avinu said to Hashem. The Torah doesn't say what he said to the people of Sodom themselves. And you could bet that Avram Avinu, who was trying to fix people, was trying to fix the people of Sodom and told them, "Hey, get your act together, people, you're doing wrong." You could bet he was saying that. Then he said to this guy, "You only know what I say to the Zionists. You don't know what I say to Hashem when I'm davening about the Zionists." That's what he said. So the Torah is reporting a conversation between Avram Avinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Avram Avinu with the people of Sodom, Avram Avinu was giving them the same. Avram Avinu spent his whole career trying to fix people up. He didn't take the sitting down. But when it comes to pleading for another chance, and that he pleads to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, take a look at starting Pasuk Yud Test. So the Malachim, the angels, go off to Sodom now. And again, I'm only using the word angels for lack of a better term. The Malachim go to Sodom. Perak Yud Test Pasuk Aleph, right in the middle of page 84. Vayavo shtei Malachim Sodoma ba'erev. V'lot Yoshev b'shar Sodom. Lot was at the gates of Sodom. Rashi said they made him a judge. Vayar Lot vayokam likrosam vayishtachu apay marza. So Lot sees these two men, and he goes and he bows down. And then he invites them into the house. Where does he get that idea from? That was one of the lessons he learned from Avram Avinu. And even in Yishmael, even the Avram Avinu, from his descendants through Yishmael to this day by the Bedouins, if you go into a Bedouin tent, the minute you get into a Bedouin tent, if you make it in alive in a Bedouin tent, they treat you like a king. They treat you like a king. There's a whole protocol there. You're a guest, and they treat you like a guest. And when you leave, just be careful when you turn your back on them. But in the tent, you're a prince. You're a guest, and this is a tradition that they have from. And it's a tradition that they have all the way from Avraham Avinu. They're known for their hospitality. They can be easily insulted, which is a host. Sometimes you want to be the good host, and the guest doesn't want you. The goal, you have to stay focused on the fact that you're trying to help him, not that you're doing it for your own pride and your own honor. So if the guest decides he doesn't want the black coffee that you serve, if you turn down coffee from the Bedouin, he's very insulted, right? Very insulted. You've insulted the host. That means that it's a distorted form of hospitality. Our goal when a guest comes into the house is not worry about my honor because he doesn't like my wife's kugel. Right? No, wow, you've insulted me. You don't want, that's your job. I obviously get him something else to eat. I get him something else. And by the way, what's the most important, when a guy arrives at your house after a trip, what's the most important thing you can do for him? A guest walks into your house, what's the first thing to do? After you, what's that?
Water.
Nope.
Seat.
Nope. What?
Seat.
Nope.
A small one.
Getting closer. First thing is, number one, make sure his sleeping facilities are comfortable. Because what a guy, a traveler, sleeping is more important than eating for many people. Make sure it's comfortable. Don't give him good food in a lousy bed. Make sure he's got a very good bed. One of the most important things when somebody comes into your house is at some point early on to show him where the bathrooms are. Let him know where the bathrooms are, because people are generally embarrassed to ask. It's like some people say, do you have a bathroom here? Oh no, we were, we actually we're special. We don't, a guy comes in and they're embarrassed to ask. Of course you have a bathroom. So let them go. By the hi, how are you? What's your? You don't just go, hi, the bathroom's here. And I'd say, hello, the bathroom's here. And I don't want to see you for the rest of the day. No. Yeah, when a guy comes in, you say, hi, you're welcome. By the way, if you need the facilities are in the back room over there, whatever it is, because the people it's awkward. There's all the part of the sensitivities of what he called. So they come to the evening, and Lot says, come to the house. And the first thing they say is, if you look in Pasuk, it says, "Vayomer hinena Adonai suruna el beis avdechem." Come to my house. Vilinu, come to sleep. V'rachatzu raglechem v'ishkamte v'lachtem dachem. Then you leave tomorrow. Vayomer lo ki barchovna li. No, we're going to sleep out in the street. So they refuse. You'll notice when Avram Avinu said to the malachim to come in, they came in right away. And we learn a principle from this. Ein misar to a dignified person, you don't say no. Ein misarvin legadol. If an important person or a Talmud Chacham or Rosh Hashanah, somebody asks you to do something, you don't say no. To a simple person like Lot, you could turn him down if you want, but not somebody who's dignified. They don't turn down. That's part of the respect process. Vayivtzar ban ma'od, he urges them. Vayasura ela vayavo al beso. Vayasla mishte umatzos ofa vayochel. He gives them food and they ate. Word got out quick. There's a man in Sdom who brought in guests. Can we open that window a little bit? Word got out quick. That door also, if possible. Word got out in Sdom. There's a man who brought in guests. Terrible emergency. Now, Rav Hirsch in this pasuk shows you why Sdom has to be destroyed. Watch this. Terem yishkavu. They just lied down. Before they lay down, ve'anshe ha'ir anshe Sdom. The men of the people, the men of Sdom. Nasabu alabais minar ve'adzaken, young to old. Kola mikatza, the entire town. Everybody's there. Vayikru elot vayomer lo ayeya anoshim asher boi lech alayla. Where are these men who have arrived? Hotziem elenu v'neida osam. Send them out so that we can sodomize them, which is where the word comes from. The word sodomy comes from Sdom. In other words, you got guests, we're going to discourage guests. And this is a way of discouraging guests, right? To invite them outside and have everybody abuse them like that will certainly, when word gets out that this is what happens to guests, it will probably cause people to look for other vacation spots, right? This is not what we want over here, right? One of the most terrifying moments of my life was I got arrested once. Whoa. Wasn't my fault. Right, the other guy started. No, I got arrested because there had been some trouble in front of one of the restaurants in Chicago, so we were all crowded around, and the police said it's an illegal gathering. Everybody clear the area. So I got into a car with about 4 or 5 of my friends. I was about 19 at the time. I got in a car. We drove through. We're just driving past to see what's going on, if there's any trouble. So the cops are, as they say, they called it disturbing the peace. Didn't do anything. We really didn't do anything. Okay, so they took us to the local lockup in Albany Park. So we were there for a couple hours till our friends came to just post bond so they could get us out. It was a big deal. So we're in this local lockup, and I remember this young cop comes in. Yeah, we were there for about a couple hours. This young policeman comes in, and he goes, all right, guys, the wagon's here. They're taking it on down a county, which is Cook County Federal Penitentiary. And I were like, whoa, whoa. And he waited about 5 seconds. He goes, just kidding. Your buddies are here. They're posting bond, right? So then we got arrested for killing a cop, right? We were not immune. That was a terrifying 5 moments. That was a very terrifying, because federal penitentiaries are not places where you want to be, right? For several reasons, right? And so we really did not want to be there. And so that's what they were offering over here. Send the guests out so we can sodomize them. Now, what's the problem here? Where's their indication? Okay, so they're a bunch of cruel perverts. But there's an indication here why they need to be destroyed. You know why it is? Normally, young people are into more physical pleasures, but they tend to be more liberal. Liberals are generally young people. Archie Bunkers of the world are not liberals, right? The younger people who have never had to work for a living are generally liberals, right? They're young and idealistic, which just means they're unemployed. right? The older, the crusty old guys, the Archie Bunkers of the world are generally conservatives, right? True or not true, right? That's generally, okay. But they're also very, very critical of the immorality of younger people. Like the older people are, even like Archie Bunker, the typical, come on with all these modern loose, even regardless of what they do in the privacy of their home, but not this public display of immorality. That's usually what you get, regardless of what they did when they were younger, right? Here, look what you've got. You've got young people, minar ve'ad zokein. You've got young people participating in cruelty, which is out of the ordinary, and you've got old people participating in immorality, which is also out of the ordinary. In other words, they've crossed into an extreme zone here in both directions. Number one, and number two, Rav Hirsch says even more. Who was the initiator of surrounding the house and doing this? Where's the initiation? He says, minar ve'ad zokein, from young to old. That means that the wickedness of Sodom was so, what's it called? So absorbed, was already permeated the entire society so deeply that the youth were already corrupted. It's one thing if the old people initiated it and the youth followed them. There's hope. But when you've already indoctrinated your youth to such a point, there's no hope for the society. It means that every shul rabbi who knows, who wants to be successful in influencing people, who do you focus on? Focus on the young people. Right? The old people, you're just hoping they don't give you too hard a time. Just donate some money and don't give me too hard a time. The young people are people that you could hopefully, if the young people are already corrupted to this point where they're the initiators of cruelty and immorality, there's no hope for the society. Got to be deleted. Amazing thing. There's a very, very big Rav who told us once, he was a rabbi of a shul, and he told us that there was a guy in the shul who he felt that there's some, the guy's got a beef with him. Something was bothering this guy, and he didn't know what it was. This guy, he could tell the guy didn't like him. So he waited, and then he had always asked the guy, what's by, if somebody, the guy would ignore him, gave him a cold shoulder. Finally, he waited on Yom Kippur. Right before Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, he walks over to this guy, a congregant of his. He says, could I ask you if I ever offended you, if I did something to you, maybe, I apologize, but can you please tell me what I did? He says, Rabbi, I hate your guts. He says, can you tell me why? What have I done? He says, every time you speak, every time you give a sermon, I end up feeling guilty. Right? He said, now I knew I was doing my job right. At that point, he said, now I knew I was doing. Yeah, he's an older person. I don't want to hear from you. I'm not interested in you influencing me. Just give me a place so I could do Yisker and then I could say Kaddish once in a while. I'm not interested in hearing from you. The older people are not easily influenced. The younger people, and these younger people are already the initiators. There's no hope for the city. Then comes the biggest shock of all. Look what Lot's response is. Lot goes out to the entrance of the house. Please, my brothers, don't perpetrate this evil. I got a better idea. I'll appease you. I have two virgin daughters. I'll send them out to you. Do whatever you want with my daughters. Don't bother these men. That I'm responsible for them. Well, you're not responsible for your daughters. You see the distortion over here. 1 second. And what's their response? Their response is no. They get out of the way. Get out of the way. We want those guys in there. Get out of the way. Can you imagine any father in the world doing this? A father whose daughters are being attacked, even if he knows that he doesn't have a chance, what's he going to do? He's going to fight to the death. He's going to fight to the death. What kind of father would do that? What kind of father would go and make that? Here guys, take my daughters, have a good time with them. That the answer is? There are millions of fathers across the world doing this every day. Millions. of fathers. You know who? Any father who sends his daughter off to a college campus. He's saying, here, guys, take her, have a good time. And not only that, I'll pay you to do it. Here's $40,000 a year tuition. Right? He pays to send his daughter off, and then the guard calls home one day. She says, "Oh, Mom, Dad, I got bad news. I better, I'm pregnant. I just had an abortion." How did this happen? How did this happen? How did it happen? How did it happen? I've only been twice on college campuses in the United States, on real college campuses, twice on what? One time I was at Ohio State University. I went to the Hill House for a Shabbos. And the guy, the host, Friday night, we had a meal. I spoke at the meal. Then I'm heading up for my room. And the guy at the Hill, he says, "Come on, Kaplan, I'm going to show you how the other half lives." So he takes me out to at Ohio State University, the street where they have all the bars. By the way, it's called High Street. You know, Kishmo Kenu. As is his name, so it is. And he's showing me these people. They actually have chains on the sidewalk. There are chains so that the crowds trying to pay to get into the bars don't overflow into the street. Whoa. It was a real eye-opener. The other place I was at, the University of Miami of Ohio. The University of Miami of Ohio. And I had to go speak to that guy, a former Ohr Somayach guy there. It was the first time it dawned on me, seeing it as you've got, let's say, 30 or 40,000 18 to 20, unsupervised 18 to 22-year-olds, right? That means that there's a lot more is going to happen than just studying philosophy, right? So what are you doing? And when you take your daughter and put her in that environment, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? But peer pressure and alcohol equals problems, right? And you're paying for it to happen. So what's the argument? Well, what are we supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? What father-in-law? What would you say Lot's supposed to do? You'd fight to the death. That's what you're supposed to do. You mean you have no alternative other than putting your daughter in that situation? Move to Alaska. That's what you should do. Hey, move to Alaska. I heard Greenland is a great place too. Right? Great. Go to Greenland. Go to Greenland. Go to Kamchatka. Right? See, I played Risk. Right? Go to Kamchatka. Right? Go to. I don't care where you go, but the last thing you're going to do is go make them hefker. Now look what a lesson the Torah is teaching you over here. The Torah says, shock, dismay, right? Well, in the meantime, goodness knows what this guy who's shocked and dismayed, goodness knows what his daughter is doing in a university. And half the girls get off the university, they're depressed. Do you know that Cornell University has the top suicide spot in the country? Yeah, I don't know how they rank these things. Like, oh, that was a great suicide. Oh, try mine. Mine was better. Mine was better than yours. Oh, this is the great suicide. It is the most popular suicide spot in the college campuses, which is not a good thing to hear, gentlemen. I've never heard that about yeshivas. Oh, this yeshiva's got the best suicide spot. I've never heard that about yeshivas, right? And in college campuses, why should they be committing suicide? Why are so many people committing? The answer is because they're depressed. That's why. The girls are either depressed or anorexic. When they're not drunk, right? They're either depressed or anorexic. The guys are having a great time. Well, what the heck, right? The girls are depressed, they're anorexic, they're destroyed. So Torah comes along and says, Lot says, here, take them. They're talking to us. Who are you talking to? What did the Torah write this for? Who are you talking to? You're talking to us. Wait, any father capable? Yeah, we're all capable. All fathers are capable. And not only they're capable, they're doing it. That's what the Torah is teaching you. Okay, at that point, the Malachim pull Lot in, and they decide, okay, time to say goodbye to Sodom. Right? Now we're going to overturn Sodom. So Lot, the Malachim come to him and they say to Lot, okay, we're going to destroy this place. Time to leave. Okay, tomorrow we'll destroy Sodom, gentlemen.